Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Together, we'll explore practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Making small changes is possible and can lead to big results. Are you ready? Let's go do this. All right, Jenn Johnson, welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I was really excited when your bio came across my email and I was like, oh, wow, this is cool.
Mhm.
So I have full expectation that this is going to be extremely informative and a lot of fun. So before we dive in, just let people know who they're listening to. Let's start there.
Sure. So my name is Jennifer Johnson. I come from the great state of Ohio in the US for any international listeners. I am 45 years young. I'm married to an amazing man. We just had our 2-year anniversary. So I definitely found the love of my life later in life. And I have a 10-year-old son who is just, he is just he has my whole heart. He's just the sweetest, most loving, compassionate little boy. And he's a soccer star. And so I get to be a soccer mom, and all those reels you see on social media of the crazy soccer moms, that's totally me. In addition to that, I am a women's empowerment coach. So I coach one on one. I do some group coaching. I host retreats. I do some workshop facilitation, both in person and virtually too, which I think that was like a blessing that came from COVID, as we learned how to do so many more things virtually, and it just is so much more convenient for people. So that was
Yeah,
kind of a blessing that came out of that time for sure.
could reach more
And
people that way.
yeah, absolutely. There's people that I'm able to reach that I otherwise wouldn't have been able
Mm.
to. So that's been a really cool outcome from, the COVID lockdown and the weeks and months that followed.
Well, let's start with the coaching because
Sure.
you and I have had some really good conversations before we hit record. So I want to
Mhm.
capture and just continue the conversation with
Yeah.
that. And you are a women's empowerment coach, but I want to say right from the outset, any guys that are listening, I don't want them to tune out because Jenn and I talked prior, and we're going to actually address the guys as well on how they can help their women who are going through
Mhm.
transformational change. So I don't want anybody to tune out on that one. And you know what? Honestly, a lot of what we talk about can be applied regardless of gender.
Totally.
So I don't want to lose anybody to have them turn off at this moment. So before
Yeah.
we jump in even more, what was one of the hardest things you had to overcome in your life, and what were some of the small steps you took that helped you get started?
Mhm, mhm. I would say one of my bigger obstacles was, really truly starting my life and exploring, my calling, my passion, all of that later in life and as a single parent, because I was a single parent for about 7 years before I met my husband. And doing that as a single parent was really scary. And, it comes with its own set of limitations. I mean, obviously, there's the financial limitations, but there's also the time. There's, whenever you say yes to one thing, you are forced to say no to another thing or things. And in this case, I got really clear that by saying yes to some of these parts of my calling and my purpose, it was going to mean me saying no to some things with my kid,
Mm,
and that was really challenging. Obviously, the finances, that was a big barrier too, because I was living off of one income, taking care of my little, and we live in a nice neighborhood that has good schools. And so there's a cost that comes with living here,
right.
and doing it on my own was really challenging. And and I think as single moms, it's so easy to fall into this narrative that at all cost I must provide. And it's so easy to say no to you, to what you want, to the
Mhm.
desires of your heart, to the dreams that you have, because your sole responsibility is to take care of that kid. And I think that that same can really be said for all parents, but I think it's a heightened level when it's a single parent. And so I would say though that was probably the biggest barrier for me was because I not only had, the actual tangible obstacles, but then there were the stories that I was telling myself or that other people were telling me.
Mm,
Because not everybody is excited for you when you're going to step out and take a risk and do something. You
right.
know, and a lot of times I think that it comes from a space where they just love you so much and they wanna make sure that you're okay.
Yeah.
There's a
It's
whole other
just
slew of reasons, and that's a whole other rabbit
yeah,
hole.
it's to stay in that safe space.
Yeah,
People look at what you're going to do, it's totally different than what you've been doing. You're stepping out of your comfort zone, and
right,
people like to stay safe,
right.
but sometimes safety is not the best place to be either. You mentioned some of the things that you had to say yes to and other things that you had to say no to. Is there something that you can think of that comes to mind that was hard for you to say no to in order to sacrifice for what you were doing?
Yeah, I think for me, the big thing was time. It
Mm,
was choosing the long-term goal in that moment. So, I didn't have time to do anything. So, something that I know that I was saying no to was, having a dating life, having a
mm,
social life, expanding my circle of friends, expanding my network of people, my community, really connecting in with those people. And I did that because I now had, because in this transition period, I was also going back to school. So I had class, I had homework, I had a house to take care of, I had a job, I had my kid, I had his activities. And it's not that I sacrificed all of those things for my vision for those long-term goals, but it's that I chose to pause those areas of my life so that I could really lean in
mm,
on what really mattered. And it's not to say that those all fell away. It's just that they didn't expand and they didn't grow in a
yeah,
way that maybe they could have if I
yeah,
had had the amount of time that I had previously had to dedicate towards it.
did you feel like you were lacking when you said no to those things?
That's a great question. I don't ever remember thinking that in the moment. I know there were times in the journey, though, that it
Mm,
felt real lonely,
yeah,
and I didn't maybe feel I had people in my corner, or I didn't have that person to call. There were times that I felt that way, but there were also times that people who I had maybe our connection had slowed down a little bit and we hadn't spent much time together that showed up for me. I remember having a phone conversation with a girlfriend and I was just in breakdown because I had just gotten my paycheck and I'd paid all my bills and I only had X amount of money left over and I said it's my electric bill or my groceries. Like,
mm,
what am I gonna pay here? And, she showed up with a large gift card for a grocery
aw,
store so
yeah,
that I didn't have to make that decision, and that was a product of all the time and energy and connection and focus that I had previously put into those relationships. And
mm,
so people will really surprise you too. They will really
yeah,
surprise you. Yeah.
yeah, so take that rather challenging part of your life and connect the dots. How did that lead you to becoming the coach that you are today?
Mhm. It is because of the people like that, the women like that continue to show up for me in surprising ways. Th It is because of those women coming alongside me,
Mm,
and this is why, right, we talked about how I primarily coach women, and, I always forget who is this said this, I think it's Edwin McManus, am I saying that right? And he says, "We're most perfectly positioned to serve the person that we once were." And so I'm serving the version of me that was 4, 5, 6 years ago. But having those women there and stand with me, as I'm journeying, stand with me in the fire to
mhm,
be my sources of encouragement and empowerment and really cheering me along got me through leaving my full-time job and stepping down to a part-time job so that I could go back to school and get my degree, which had been a goal of mine. It led me to even entertaining the idea of starting my coaching business because it's actually my girlfriends that said, "Why don't you become a coach? You love doing this. Why don't you become a coach?" And I was like, and I just blew it right off. I'm like, because
Yeah.
everybody's a coach right now. It was just
Yeah,
one of
yeah,
those things where I'm like, every time I turn on social media, I'm seeing somebody else is declaring that they're a coach now.
yeah, but, the world of coaching is so broad, and there's so
Yeah.
much out there, and there was the one statement that you just said that is, quote, "There's so many coaches out there." There are
Yeah.
so many people out there, and each coach that truly is living in their passion
Mhm.
is going to find those people that they need to meet,
Sure.
and when you look at how abundantly rich
Mhm.
this world really is,
Mhm.
if you're truly good at what you do, you'll never run out
No,
of people to help because there's always the next person. So,
absolutely.
yeah, it's just so following your heart and going after that. And actually, I wanted to ask you, you talk a lot about creating the life that you want,
Mhm.
and you coach women, primarily women, who are looking to create the life that, quote, "sets your heart on fire."
Yeah.
And we hear that statement, "Just go create the life you want," but there are obstacles there. So what are some of the common obstacles, maybe lies that women face or tell
Mhm.
themselves that would prohibit them or impede them from creating the life they want? And if you want, define creating the life you want, which is so broad.
Sure, sure. I think that the biggest obstacle that we have in creating a life that we want are the stories that we tell ourselves on why we can't have it. I think
Mm,
truly that's the biggest obstacle because if you really want something, if like my husband and I are taking our son to Disney for Christmas this year. And we are so excited about it and we are so committed to this. And we're also buying a house this summer. And so we're in saving mode. Like we're so committed to this that we are putting our money everywhere it needs to be. Like we're allocating every single paycheck, every single client payment that comes in. Like we are making this happen no matter what, right? Because
mhm,
this is something that's so important to us. It's something we're so excited about. We we just want this so bad. We're making it happen. And I think that and I know that those two things are, not quite as not quite as big as, creating a whole life, but my point in saying this is when you really want something in life, you will do whatever it takes to get there. The problem is these two things that I'm working towards right now, right? They're not changing the trajectory of my life. But leaving my job to go back to school and then starting my own business, that most certainly did. And
sure.
so I think that when we entertain those ideas, that doubt, that imposter syndrome,
Mhm,
the the I can't do it, the not believing in ourselves, the being consumed with the opinions of the people around us, it really truly is the biggest barrier because
mhm,
there's a way to do anything. I'm not saying go quit your job today and, go start the Airbnb business that you've always wanted to do so you could travel all over
right.
the country. There's a way to get there. There's a way to get from point A to point B, but it's the story about why you can't quit your job.
Mm,
And that is, and we're just talking about jobs here now, but it's a story that you're telling yourself about why you can't do it. And
mhm,
so this is where coaches come into play. No matter what kind of coach it is, right? Like I work with women. There's ADHD coaches, there's financial coaches,
yeah,
there's coaches for anything. There's, narcissist recovery coaches. There's coaches for anything. So it's
mhm,
identify that limiting belief and attack it. Don't
mhm,
let it consume you. And in full transparency, like I've definitely been there before. So, I'm
I think
not
we
like
all have. I think we just get stuck at the limiting belief, and here's the difference. It's you've got the limiting belief in front of you,
uh-huh.
and it's almost like you have a fork in the road. You can choose to believe the limiting belief, and it'll do just that. It'll limit you, or you can choose to change the narrative of the limiting belief. But
Right.
in doing so, there's something that has to click that makes you believe
Mhm.
the other version of the limiting belief, like the other side of the limiting
Mhm.
belief. If
Mhm.
you say to yourself, I can't leave my W-2, and
Mhm.
then you go to the other side and you say, "Well, I can leave my W-2," but there's that part of your brain that still doesn't believe it. So, what is something that you would share with somebody to help them start to create that life by overcoming the limiting beliefs, but then start to believe
Right.
they're
I would
starting to create?
Yeah, I would say it's getting really clear on what it's costing you to
Mhm,
let that limiting belief take over your life. What is it costing you? Because odds are you're probably showing up at work, half in, half out. It's probably draining you. You're probably using all of your personal time or vacation time to make your week shorter. I know I was.
yeah.
Just use it. I'm like, I just can't get through this week. I need it to be the weekend already. I'm going to take a personal day on Friday. Like, what is it costing you? Because it's likely costing you something energetically. And that is impacting every other area of your life. So, checking in with your partner, checking in with your kids, checking in with your relationships. What is it costing you to stay in that position? Because staying in that place where you're so unhappy, where that limiting belief is just consuming you, is actually harder than breaking through it. It's just you have a greater history with that limiting belief. Now it's time to create new evidence to the contrary. So that's where you really start to bring in the people that are going to fuel the new
Mhm.
story, where they're going to support you in the building evidence. And this tip was given to me one time, and I really love this is start literally tracking your evidence. So I have a box in my room and it has cards and letters and little mementos, like little gifts. I'll print off emails or screenshot text messages and
Mm.
print them off. And they are client wins. They are wins from like past students in another program that I was a part of. That's the evidence that my limiting belief that I'm never going to be a good coach, I'm not qualified for this, that's all that evidence to the
Yeah.
contrary. So I think that that's a big thing is stack the evidence. Just really start keeping track of it. And there's a saying like what you focus on grows, focus on that.
Yeah.
But
Would you
so
fo
many of us are too busy focusing on that limiting belief. And so it's keeping us right where we are.
Yeah, the negative tends to be more familiar. I don't know
Mhm.
why our brain does that, but we go to that worn out path where you almost sometimes feel better in the negative than you do in the
Right,
positive.
right.
And it, I wonder if it has something to do with a cultural perspective or just something that our brains just do. But like you said, accumulate all that evidence.
Mhm,
Success leaves clues. When you're creating the life that you want and you're
mhm,
stepping out of your comfort zone, there's a level of fear there
mhm,
that starts to creep in because you're
mhm,
going to change your life. You're going into an unknown. You have a quote on your website that says, quote, "When I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I'm afraid." And
mhm,
Audre Lorde said that. So
mhm.
I want to talk about your thoughts on fear and changing your life and how you help others overcome that fear.
Sure. I think the thing that I remind myself of is, "Who is this about and why am I here?" Because this isn't about me. This is about the people that I serve, and whenever we turn the focus back to ourselves, it gives that fear an opportunity just to take over. And so, there's so many sayings, right? Like, do the fear until it disappears. When in doubt, focus out. But truly, you know, take the focus off yourself and put it on other people. I was recently reaching out to people about a program that I was launching, and it was really important to me that the right group of women was in this program. And
Mm,
when I say the right group, it was the women who are going to be in this program are the women who are supposed to be in this program. And I am going to surrender and let them come to me. And so, women who were placed on my heart, I reached out to them. And if they were a no, they were a no. It's no skin off
mm,
my back. It's okay. But that idea of reaching out to, you know, the other soccer moms, or maybe people who had guided me or supported me earlier on in my journey, right? People that I are more successful than me, reaching out, the idea of reaching out to those people and inviting them into this space was so scary for me. And I just thought, you know what, Jen, this isn't about you. This isn't about your silly little fears that you're blowing up into
mm,
something bigger. This is about these women. And this is about their journey and what's available to them. So focus on them. What do you see for them? What's possible for them? What's the
mm,
vision that they've been holding that they haven't fully leaned into? And so just really leaning into that space. And, I filled the program in like a week. And I had a lot of no's, and that's okay too. Like I said, maybe that one wasn't for them. Maybe it's not right now. Maybe it's later. Maybe it's never at all. And that's okay. It just means that what I'm offering at this time wasn't meant to be part of their journey.
mm,
So I think that on focusing on the individual
mhm.
snaps us out of our own BS in a millisecond. You know, one of my mentors recently, and she's a coach. She actually trains coaches as well, and she's incredible to learn from. And she's just been such a blessing and a gift in my life. And she recently lost her daughter, and it's unimaginable what she was going through. But 24, 48 hours after this happened, she was still taking client calls. And I just remember thinking, like, please take the time off. Like, nobody's going to blame you for not taking calls this week. And she said, I know, but it's so life giving to be able to support my clients, and the opportunity to just take the focus off of myself and put it on them just really
Mm,
reminded me of why I'm here. And I thought that was so powerful and such a testimony to what selflessness can actually open up for us.
mhm. I heard you mention the word surrender,
Mhm.
and talk about surrender and how that plays a role in your life
Mhm.
to things that come your way.
Yeah. Listen, this is a lifelong journey for me. Surrender is because I like to control things. And so surrender is really challenging for me. And so this is so funny. A few months ago, I had hosted a retreat, and I I sold all but one spot filled up in like 48 hours. And then I don't know how I did this, but I accidentally deleted the website. So I was on the back end of my programs doing some things, and I accidentally deleted it. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to recreate this entire thing. I was so upset. And I was going for a hike with a girlfriend of mine, and I was telling her about what I'd done and how I was going to have to recreate this site. And she said, don't you dare recreate that site. She said, there is something here for you. And I was just like, I know. Thank you for remembering. And it was like, and prior to that, I forgot about this. The day I deleted it, we took my son. So we're soccer fans in our household. We went to a crew game. They were playing in a cup game, and we were going to take those little scooters that they have downtown and ride around a little bit. And I had been in conversation all day long with all these women, and I accidentally At this game, I dropped my phone and it just shattered. And so the entire rest of the night, it was about 48 hours. I was totally out of pocket. So all these women that were like in conversation with me about this retreat no longer had access to me or me them. I had deleted my
Oh
website
my
for this
gosh.
retreat. And I was like, what is going on here? And I said, okay, this is me being called into surrender and
S
trust that the women that are supposed to be there that weekend
Yeah.
are going to be there. And let me tell you that I had a vision of 5 women joining, and I ended up with 12. And
Wow.
I never had a website for it again. Like, I think I
What
created
did what did the universe show you out of all of that happening?
that my purpose on this earth is larger
Mm,
than even I can imagine. And how silly of me to think that I could control it.
wow.
And so the women and some of the men, because I do work with some men too, the women and the men that I am on this earth to serve are gonna find me with a website or not. You know, they're gonna they're gonna get a hold of me if they
That's a
can't
good
reach me
point.
on my cell phone.
That's a
Our
good
paths
point.
are gonna cross somehow or another. Like
Yeah.
we were meant to come together.
Mm,
And so my purpose on this earth is bigger than me, and it's bigger than how I think I can control it. And so it's just
mm,
that constant reminder, stop controlling, release, surrender. Like,
mhm.
who are you calling in? You know, and just let it be. Truly, just let it be. And it doesn't mean that I still, don't grind at the times that I have to grind.
Right,
But
right.
it's a real good opportunity to check in, like, why am I grinding right now?
Mm.
Am I trying to control, or do I have a list of to-dos that I truly get to get done, right? Oftentimes I'm trying to control it. Things aren't going how I want right now, so I'm gonna, I don't have yeah, it's like that retreat for perfect exa I have to sell the spot. I have to get the spot filled. I have to get the spot filled. Why? It's been 48 hours. The retreat wasn't for 2 more months. I had all kinds of time. I was just trying to control it. And so when I
Yeah.
released the control, when I let it go, when I totally surrendered, 7 more women found their way to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How'd that make you feel when that happened, when you let that go and then that was the outcome?
I'm telling you, it was something pretty spectacular. Because
Yeah.
and there are so many times where I remember that weekend taking a step back and I thought, I can't believe I get paid to do this."
Wow. Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
believe that my calling and my purpose is to just pour into these women and to listen to them, even open in ways, many of them were current clients, but listen to them open in ways that maybe they hadn't yet. It was almost like all the work that we had been doing to that point brought us right where we are, and then everything just opened up, and I'm like, "Oh
Wow.
my gosh, we have such this beautiful beautiful place to go
Yeah.
now."
Yeah.
So, it was such
Wow.
a gift, truly, it was such a gift.
That's cool. Let's talk about
Yeah,
purpose. How do you
yeah.
help somebody and who's listening and going, I don't know what my purpose is in life. I'm just going through the motions. I know there's more to life than this.
Mhm,
What are a few small steps somebody can take to start discovering
mhm.
their purpose?
There's a couple things. One is notice the places and the spaces where you really feel lit up, where you just are like, "Oh man, I could totally do that again." So notice those trends. Notice where you really come to life and you are your best version of yourself. That's probably some place to start looking. Like, okay, there's something here for me. So for me, it was when I left my job, I knew I wanted to help people. And I didn't know what that looked like. So that's why I went into social work because I was like, I know I can help people with social work. And so as I navigated that, then, my coaching, that obviously opened up. But start looking in the spaces where you notice that you're like, oh, this, it gives me life. I feel so full right now. I would say a second one is slow down because yes, you do know. You actually do know. You just aren't giving yourself the space for it to come to life because we are so busy right now. We're so busy and I'm guilty of it myself. I was just talking to my sister and I have just a couple more semesters left to finish my degree. And I thought, okay, I think I'm going to go back spring semester because I had taken a little bit of time off. I'm going to go back spring semester. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to put one more thing on my plate right now. So I had to kind of check in with myself right there on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But slow down because you do know. And what parts of you are benefiting by pretending that you don't know? It's
It's a good
probably the
question.
parts of you that are scared, to take that leap. It's probably the parts of you that feel like an imposter or the parts of you that know that everything in your life is going to change if you do this. So those parts of us that maybe we call them our limiting beliefs, but at one point in time, those parts were there to protect us. And so
Mhm.
they're still trying to protect us. So there is a benefit to you pretending that you don't know. There is a book, and I actually just really started digging into it. It's called Find Your Why by Simon Sinek.
Mhm.
Um, it's been such a great read. I've been kind of like slowly reading it.
Mhm.
It's for me, and it's an easy read. So I think a lot of people could probably just sit down and dive into it. But there's so much good stuff. It was funny. I was reading it on a trip recently, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I haven't even made it to chapter 1 yet, and I've been highlighting and underlining." All I had read was like the forward and the introduction. But in this book, they talk about your purpose and your why is so deep rooted. And
Mm.
so for some people, they're pretty easily able to tap into that, but some people they're not. And so it's giving an opportunity for you to really kind of lean in and focus in and discover what that is, and
Mm.
then start to bring it to life.
Oh,
I think the
wow.
big one is slow down.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then it also probably ties back in with what you were talking about earlier about the yeses and nos to
Mhm,
say no to a number of things, and when we say no to some things, that also forces us to slow down too.
mhm. Absolutely.
Right. So, as your clients start going through these transformational changes, a lot of times they have friends and partners that are watching
Mhm,
this change at the same time. What suggestions or tips do you have for the other half that's witnessing this
yeah.
person who's starting to find their own vision, find their way, and possibly transform and change their life?
Mhm,
There's that relationship aspect. As somebody changes, chances are they have a
mhm,
spouse, a partner, a significant other that's maybe not changing at the same
mhm,
time. In
mhm.
your experience, what have you seen?
Oh, that's 100% what happens. And I'm currently seeing this with one of my clients is like, she has just blown up in the last year,
Yeah.
and we're starting to see how it's impacting her relationship because the person that she once was and the person that he is, that worked. But as she's changing, that dynamic doesn't quite fit anymore. And so
Right.
they're starting to bump heads a little bit. And so there's some stuff going on there. And when when we change, it forces the people around us to take a look at themselves.
Mm.
And so noticing where that judgment is coming from. So if my partner is going through something and he's starting to make some changes and I'm starting to get a little bit judgmental or annoyed or irritated or angry, notice those and stop projecting it onto them. It's time for you to look in. Why is that triggering you? Why is that bothering you? And it's okay to say, well, because before I used to be able to run the show. Before it was my way or the highway, and she just went along with anything because she
Yeah.
didn't really care. But guess what? Now she cares. So now you get to learn to compromise. You get to learn to like hand the reins over
Yeah.
sometimes. And I would say don't be afraid to lean in and get support yourself. And it doesn't have to be coaching. Perhaps it's talk therapy, but perhaps it's coaching, or picking up a book. There's something available for you here. That's why it's pinging you.
Yeah.
And so it's your chance to do your own work. And what a gift, too. Like, what a gift. My husband and I, we look at this picture that my husband and I met, and we were long distance for about the first 6 months of our relationship.
Mhm.
And so we have a picture from the first time we met in real life. And that was only about 3.5 years ago. And I look at that picture and I'm like, babe, we've aged since then. But we've been through a lot in the last 3.5 years. Like, a lot of life has happened. And yeah, some of it's probably aged us a little bit. But what a gift that side by side, we got to grow in our own different ways. And how that has allowed us to support one another, and how each other's growth has been inspiration to us, or an opportunity for us to look at ourselves.
Mhm.
And I think the other thing too is, like, it's okay to say, and I hesitate to say this because I'm like, I'm not an advocate for divorce here, right? I'm not an advocate for breaking up, but
Mhm.
there are going to be times somebody's going to change in such a way that maybe you no longer are compatible. And
Yeah.
if you're not willing to do the work, you also don't get to stay there and try to bring that person down all the time.
Right.
And if you are doing the work and you're growing, and like your life is like becoming the thing that you always dreamed about, and your partner's not aligned with you, you don't get to stay with somebody who's not inspiring you, empowering you, encouraging you every day of your life. I read this book when I was single. It's called Single is Your Superpower. It was some book that I saw on Facebook, and I don't know, I bought it. I can't even think of the guy's name, Casey something. I can't remember his name. But anyways, it's a cute little book. One of the things that he talks about is when you're single and you're dating, don't make a non-negotiable list, but make a vision for dating. And he goes into explaining
Mm.
why, like, you don't want to do the non-negotiables. But he talks about making a vision for dating. And so at this point in time, I was dating. And so I got really clear on what this vision was for me. And my vision was, I want a partner who is the co creator of joy in my life, and was who is the co-creator of joy and is my biggest cheerleader. I'm probably butchering it a little bit, but it was really important to me that someone was going to have fun with me, and
Mhm.
somebody was going to be my cheerleader. And when I
Yeah.
got really clear on what that vision was, I met my husband just a month later, and he is truly, maybe rivals my mom, my biggest cheerleader. He's always cheering me on. And that has made all of the difference in my ability to grow my business and expand my business and succeed. Because I'm clear that if I had a partner who was not being the supportive, I would not be where I am today. And so I think that's also a takeaway. Like, check in with yourself. If you are not
Yeah.
your partner's biggest cheerleader in every area of their life, how selfish of you, really?
Yeah.
How selfish of you? And we all get to have that. We all get to have that. And just to like touch on this real quick, like, I have a handful of clients that are going through this, and they chose to go to counseling.
Yeah.
I'm like, heck yeah, I'm cheering them on. Because
Right.
not just one of them gets to be living their best life, they both get to be living their best life.
Yeah, yeah. I love that what you were talking about having your partner come alongside of you and growing at the same time.
Mhm.
And you mentioned that you come alongside each other in the challenges and difficulties, and instead of going other ways, instead of being judgmental or pointing fingers or going at each other in the midst of
Mhm.
difficulty. They come alongside and then find the superpowers and be able to lean into
Yeah,
those and help one another and cheer each other on, even in the midst of struggles and challenges.
absolutely.
What's one thing you and your husband do that when you're in the midst of a struggle or something that's
Mhm,
just really happening there, how do you help each other stay positive and cheer each other on when
mhm,
there's a challenge?
mhm. I would say the first thing is we let each other have our feelings. And so maybe it's I get to lay in bed and cry and say all the reasons why I can't do it. Right? Just let the feelings move through you.
Mm,
Just don't let them take up residence. Don't let them unpack and set up shop, but let the feelings move through you. Say them, cry them out, whatever it is that you do to release them, like go to the gym, hit the punching bag, go for a run, cry it out. Like I love to cry it out in a hot shower. That is how I let stuff go. I get
mm,
in a steaming hot shower and I will just cry it out. And then he'll be like, okay, now let's really talk about this because you can do it. You are actually doing it right now. What's the real story here? What's the thing that's really bugging you right now? And we'll just kind of like break it down and get granular. And also he's so good about this too, is he'll be like, "What do you need from me right now?"
mm. It's a
Like
good question.
it is, and he's a coach
Question.
too, and so he'll say like, "What do you need from me right now?" Or, "Who do you need me to be?" Because sometimes I just need him to be my husband, and so I just need him to let me vent and stomp around and whatever, I just need him to let me be mad or sad or frustrated or
Mhm.
whatever it is, but then or there are times where I'll say, "I need you to be a coach." I
Mm.
need you to be coach Stu. I need you to help me break this down. And so he's really, really good about doing that. And I find that to be really supportive too, because I think that just in general, and I notice I do this too, especially with my kid, like I tend to want to like jump in and rescue him. I want to make
Yeah.
him feel better.
Don't
I
we
want him to be
all?
better. Yeah.
Don't we all wanna do that?
Yes.
It's a great question to ask, "What do you need from me right now? How can I
Mhm.
help you?"
Yeah.
Because then that puts it back on them and puts you in the position to be able to serve them in the way that they need it, not in the
Exactly.
way we think we need it. And me as a mom, I have 3 kids, and you're a mom too. I think as moms, we go in and we wanna just fix problems.
Oh, yeah.
We wanna fix
Yes.
problems, give our kids solutions. We don't want them to hurt or struggle, and we do the same thing with our spouses, significant others, close friends. We can do it with them too. We just always wanna come up with that, "Oh, well, wait, I see your solution," as opposed to asking the question, "What do
Mhm.
you need from me right now? How can I
Mhm.
help you?"
Mhm.
To meet them right where they are.
Mhm.
So, I love that. I'm glad you brought that up, and I
Yeah.
love that suggestion.
Yeah.
So, I ask a couple questions at the end of every podcast. You already answered one of them, a favorite book, and that was Know Your Why by Simon Sinek, so
A great
we'll
one.
go with that one. Another question I ask is, what is one question or topic you wish I would have asked about, and how would you have answered the question or expanded on the topic?
Oh, so good. That's such a good one. 'Cause I feel like we just talked about so much. I think something that's really important to me that we didn't touch on what is how we how we give permission to everybody around us by the person that we are, by the actions that we take, by the way we are being. And, we kind of skirted the issue a little bit, right? We're talking about my kid, for example. There are some things that I've gotten to say no to. And, as much as I show up for him and I do, sometimes I cannot. Sometimes I have to choose, you know, client calls or something like that. There are times where I do have to choose or I get to choose my career. But I think what's most important about all of this is I am his permission to go for what you want, no matter the age, no matter the stage, no matter the status. So what he's seeing right now is a mom and a stepdad who are committed to their dreams, and it doesn't matter how old we are. It doesn't matter
Mhm.
what our circumstances are. And so he's going to do that too. We are his permission to do that. When I was a single mom going back to school, can I tell you how many women that I knew that were single parents that were like, "You've inspired me so much to go back to school. I'm doing it too." And so, and then they're going back to school. But there was that person for me too, right? Like there was my friend Candace, who was a single mom of two, and I'm watching her go back to school and get her master's. And she was permission for me to do the same thing. And so, in every area of our life, whether it's good or bad, I'm saying that good or bad in parentheses,
Right.
we are teaching and we are giving permission to the people around us to do the same thing. And so, like, kind of checking in with yourself, like, this, I'm also like a huge advocate for being your first priority, not your kids being your first priority. Because then what happens is you are now teaching your daughter or your son to put other people's needs before him. And how
Mm.
toxic is that? Right? I don't want my son to have that relationship down the road where he's putting all of his partner's needs before his. And so that's something that's also really important to me is when we give ourselves permission to step into something big and bold and beautiful, we give everyone around us permission to do the same thing.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's
Thanks.
great. I'm glad you said that. It just expanded
Mhm.
my thought, my vision, and also realizing that when I share my dreams and the things that I'm going after, you never know who's listening and you never know where they're coming
Right.
from and you don't know how that's going to affect them. It could be a conversation with a stranger in the grocery store and they could walk
Totally.
away changed,
Yeah.
so it's not just those that are closest to us, but
Absolutely.
it's that we're living that authentic life, that real life in front
Mhm.
of others rather than denying ourselves, and then not living our dream. So,
Yeah.
as we close, what is one small step that someone can do today that's going to help them change their tomorrow?
Ooh, good question. I think a big thing is routine, but I think that it also starts with your sleep. So I think that a solid routine, whether it's morning or evening or both, sets us up for all the things that we say we want to do the next day, but it starts with rest and it starts with hydration. So I'd say drink water and sleep. No, because it
It's
does
so
matter.
simple. Yeah, it does matter.
Yeah.
No, and there's a science behind that too.
Yeah.
I've just been through a coaching program and it does. It's the eating, sleeping, and moving are the three top self care things that you need to do. And what that looks like for everybody is different. So I'm glad
Mhm.
you said that sleep is a priority and there's science out there to back that up. And hydration,
Absolutely.
honestly, yes, true. Drink lots of
Mhm.
water.
Mhm.
So
I know.
I'm
I know that
glad you
sounds
said
so
that.
basic too, and I
I
wish that
know.
I had something more mind-blowing, but truly,
Yeah.
it
No, get a good night's sleep is a small step that can and would have big results.
right.
So,
Well, and I think too, like, moms do this especially. I don't know if dads do this, but I know moms do this, is they stay up too late at night because they're creating that time that they didn't get throughout the
yeah.
day,
Yeah.
and then they pay for it the whole next day.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
what if you went to bed on time, actually got the rest that your body needs, and then carved that space out the next day, because there's
Mhm.
nothing more important that's gonna happen in that next day than the time that you carve out to pour into yourself.
Right,
Nothing is
right,
more.
and fell into this trap for many, many years as I was a parent. I didn't realize that if I don't take care of myself, I can't take care of others around me.
Right. It's
So,
put your oxygen mask on first.
right, right, I never heard that decades ago, and I always, always put everybody else first, and it's been quite a transition in my own life to turn
Yeah,
around and say, "You know what? No, I've gotta come first. I have to show up for me first, and then that allows me to show up for everybody else that comes into my life
100%.
in that particular day." So,
Yep.
Jen, how can people find you and reach out to you?
You can find me through my website. It's JennJohnsonCoaching.com. If you want to even just schedule, a connection call. It doesn't cost you anything, and it's, like no pressure. But if there's something that you heard that maybe, you would like a little bit of, you know, for me to elaborate, or a question or something like that, you can schedule a connection call through my website, or you can email me as well.
Perfect. Thank you. This has
Yeah.
been a great conversation,
Oh,
Jen.
great.
Thank you
Thank
so much for
you.
the gift of your time. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me, and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, reach out to me and let's have a conversation. Until next time, love yourself, then love others. Peace.